all.
Good to go.
Thank you. Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is February 13th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable and will be broadcast on Channel 18 after the meeting has been concluded. The agenda for this meeting is available on the town website. Welcome to all of you. And Chuck, if you will call the roll, please, to determine our quorum.
I will. Lillian?
Here.
Hector?
I'm here.
Jackie?
I'm here.
Wendy?
Here.
Neil?
Here.
And Chuck is here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 23rd meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the January 23rd meeting. Is there any discussion? Corrections, comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have not sent those out yet.
That's what I thought.
Okay, erase that.
Yeah, we're having a little problem providing.
We're jumping the gun here.
We have no staff support right now.
I was looking for them and I said, I guess I didn't print them out. Okay, well, moving right along then. We will postpone the approval of those minutes to our next meeting. The new business for today is a review of the FY24 capital submissions for water supply, water pollution control, and CWMP. And I see that we've got the staff here, so I'll just turn it over to you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you having us back. We'll just go in order that was on the sheet that Mark's around. So Andy Boulay, the Division Supervisor for the Water Pollution Control Division, why don't you go ahead and start off with water pollution control ones.
Thanks. Give me 1 second to just share my screen here. Everyone seeing that?
Yep.
Great.
All set. Thanks, Griffin. My name is Andrew Boulay. I'm the Division Supervisor for the Water Pollution Control Division. All of these projects are funded by the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. And all of these projects have been factored into a rate model that's been reviewed prior to the submission of these CIPs. So everything here is factored into the rates for fiscal year 24. And that's looking like it's likely to be a 5% increase, although that has not been approved quite yet. So the first capital project that we've got on the priority list is the pump station rehabilitation program. The purpose of this project is to carry out critical repairs to the town's sewage pump stations as identified in the 2019 wastewater pump station asset management plan. The focus of this in fiscal year 24 is the rehabilitation of Ocean Street, Bayshore Road, Gosnold Street, Marks Path, Burses Way, and the vacuum sewer pump station. So we've got a wide array of repairs that we're doing on our existing pump stations. Most of the construction activities happening at Ocean Street, Bayshore Road, and Gosnold Street pump station. These are all in the Ocean Street area in downtown Hyannis. And most of these repairs are structural, mechanical, electrical, and they're aimed to extend the useful life of these pump stations by another 30 years. And there's also a focus on coastal resiliency with these pump stations because they all fall in flood-prone areas. The Burses Way and vacuum sewer pump station repairs are relatively minor, and they are seeking to improve the HVAC and odor control systems. And the Marks Path pump station is going to undergo design. This pump station is at its capacity and more flow is planned to be delivered to it through the CWMP. And it has reached the end of its useful life. So these are the areas that are being covered with the pump station rehabilitation program. You can go ahead and hit the slide, Griffin. These are some pictures of these pump stations. So top left corner is Ocean Street, right near Bismore Park. Top right corner is Bayshore Road Pump Station. We have Gosnold in the bottom left, and Mark's Path is in the bottom right. And we threw some slides in here recently to kind of illustrate some of the coastal resiliency issues. This is just from the end of December, 12/23, a coastal flooding event down there. The Bayshore Road Pump Station is in between those two yellow bollards over to the right. And you can see the floodwaters were rapidly approaching, but they didn't reach the level of inundation. Thankfully, there was not a lot of wave action that could have caused some inundation of this pump station. But this is the type of event that we're looking to protect against. And I know there's another slide after this that shows Ocean Street down by Bismore Park, a similar situation with floodwaters. So that's kind of the focus right off the bat with this round of improvements for our pump station rehabilitation program.
So can I ask a general question?
Sure.
With a extension of a 30-year life, I assume there's some proviso in there that sea levels will keep rising, and that's all built into whatever it is we're doing now to try to extend this for another 30 years.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Our pump station evaluation program, or the asset management program, the report focused on, they actually did an elevation study for all of our coastal pump stations. Griffin, you might remember the flood elevation, but we're protecting it at 100-year flood plus, I believe, 3 feet. So that's the level of inundation we're trying to protect against.
Got it. Thank you.
So how many years will you begin to reevaluate whether you need to upgrade the rehabilitation again?
I would say we'll probably be looking at it in another 20 to 25 years, after we make these improvements.
Uh-huh.
The expected useful life of this pump station is expected to be increased by about 30 years.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
What year are we in for the life expectancy of the existing one?
That's a great question. These pump stations, these 3 that we're talking about that are along the coastline, were actually built in the late 60s. So they're well past their design life. They've been improved, over the years, not comprehensively, but a new pump has been installed, say at Ocean Street. Some valves have been replaced as they've failed. But this is more of a comprehensive repair than a fix it when it breaks approach.
Anybody else? Okay.
When you say the pump station, are you saying aspects of the pump station, or you were talking the entire pump station?
We're looking at the entire pump station and all of the systems associated with it. So that would be, the electricity coming in. It could be the valves within the pump station. It could be the pumps themselves. It could be the control panels and everything in between. So it's everything. And in this case, the pump station that we're looking at right here, all we're looking at is this little hatch, but that goes below grade about, I think that one's about 15 feet below grade. So there's like a little subterranean compartment that our guys will open up that hatch and climb down in, and there's pumps down there and a bunch of equipment down there below the sidewalk. So that's what you're looking at here.
The mechanical aspect of it is what you're...
The mechanical is one part of it. That's mechanical typically refers to the pumps and maybe some of the HVAC that goes along with the station. But this is also looking at, yes, electrical, coastal resiliency, and everything in between.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next project?
Next project is we took a similar approach with an asset management plan that was conducted in 2021 for our facility. We've done a lot of projects at the facility over the last several years, addressing different components of the process, but this one really ties in everything in between. A lot of the pumps that pump water from one spot to another, and a lot of the office spaces, roofs that might have gotten missed with some of these equipment upgrade or these tank upgrade projects that we've done. So the purpose of this project is to carry out critical repairs to the water pollution control facility over a 5-year period, as identified in the 2021 Water Pollution Control Facility Asset Management Plan. And these are similar improvements: structural, electrical, mechanical, HVAC. They're comprehensive improvements. The first round really targets our effluent pumping system, which was constructed in 1980 and has reached the end of its useful life, or expected design life, I should say. It also addresses the plant water system, which is where we recycle water that we treat, so we don't pull water off of the town water system. Well, actually, we use a lot of water with the treatment process, but we use our own water. We reuse our own water within the process. So this is the system that collects and pressurizes the water and distributes it around the plant. That's getting a hard look, or an upgrade with this project. And then I mentioned some HVAC improvements for some of our pump rooms, as well as new roofs on those pump rooms. Most of, if not all of the improvements being carried out with this were, they're improving infrastructure that was built in around 1980. So you're looking at 43 years that we've gotten out of this equipment, and it's time to give it a facelift. So I think Griffin's got a few pictures of some of our facilities. So the left is our effluent pumping room. All the water that moves through the plant is pumped through these effluent pumps. On the right is our primary sludge pump. So our primary clarifiers have pumps underground around them that actually remove sludge from the wastewater treatment process and deliver it to our sludge processing room. So these are just a couple of the areas that are going to be touched with this project, but it's pretty wide ranging. Any questions on that?
Yes, this is Neil. I was just wondering, both the prior project and this went up about 70% in cost from the last submission. Were these expanded in some way, or what caused the increases?
So yeah, with the pump station one, it's a little bit different. That was crafted in 2019, kind of pre-COVID, and that's seen a lot of the price escalation that you've seen with probably a lot of other projects, and inflationary increases. I know with the facility improvement plan, there's a little bit of that worked in here as well. But also we've taken the first 2 years and combined them into one, from the previous capital plan to this capital plan. So I don't have the previous numbers in front of me, but we did take fiscal year 24 and 25 and combine them into one project here to try to get more out of our work.
But that did go up by almost a factor of 2 over the prior 2 years combined. So you're saying that's inflation?
That's a big part of it. It's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Well, Andrew, the components of the facility improvements are fairly comprehensive. So it looks like a pretty big overhaul.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work. And like I mentioned, we've recently rebuilt our clarifiers. We're in the process of evaluating our headworks and our biological treatment. We're doing a $12 million upgrade to our sludge processing building currently. We recently spent some money on our installing a new generator at the plant. And this kind of ties everything together, so to speak. It's a lot of the stuff that kind of falls in between the big process components that is in need of an update. And, you know, like I said, the majority of this was 1980 construction. So we've gotten good use out of it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's the downtown Hyannis main rehab.
Yep. So this project, the downtown Hyannis force main rehabilitation, really is going to take a hard look at the two main pipes that come from Hyannis and deliver wastewater flow to the water pollution control facility. So this will be an evaluation, survey, design of rehabilitation of the Ocean Street and Bayshore Road force main and the Old Colony Pump Station force main. A force main is a pipe that leaves a pump station and pumps flow rather than a gravity sewer, which flows by gravity. The Ocean Street and Bayshore Road pump stations share a 10-inch force main that is approaching 90 years in age. This pipe is made of ductile iron. And the Old Colony force main it was constructed in, this pipe is nearly 70 years old and is made of asbestos cement. So we're going to do a preliminary analysis of alternatives and select the rehabilitation method to try to extend the useful life of these force mains another 50 years. So these force mains can also interconnect with some valve work that we're planning to address as part of this project as well, which will allow one pump station to feed into either of the force mains to provide redundancy for downtown Hyannis. I think there's a map on the next slide that shows the routes of these pipes. So you've got the Old Colony force main, which is a little bit of a shade of red. And then the Ocean Street and Bayshore force mains are purple. And they share a common route with the exception that Ocean and Bayshore kind of run up Barnstable Road and North Street, as opposed to Old Colony going down South Street and up High School Road. And I can take any questions on these pipes.
So this project basically is to do an evaluation and to determine the new design and the, well, since the pipes are so old, to determine how much it might, whether you will change it in any way?
Yeah, there's a lot of different rehabilitation methods that you can use to fix a pipe. You know, you can reline a pipe as long as you can get it empty and accessible. There's a technology called pipe bursting. If you need to have a larger pipe installed, you can actually force it through the smaller pipe and it breaks the pipe as it goes. Or, you know, there may be an argument made to be for these pipes to be dug up and replaced. You know, we'd prefer not to do that. We'd prefer to get this done as cost effectively as possible. So in order to do that, we need to do a real thorough evaluation, which may involve taking these force mains offline one at a time and digging up select areas and sticking cameras and other inspection devices through them to test pipe wall thickness or to just inspect visually what's going on inside these pipes. Once we get a handle on their condition, that'll give us what we need to make a decision on alternatives for rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you don't begin construction until 26. I guess it just gives you more time to evaluate and figure out what needs to be done.
Yeah, there's going to be some design work that needs to come out of it. And this is it's a tough process. It's not a very easy thing to do. You know, it's not something we can just you know, open the pipe up and look inside. They're actually going to be probably digging and installing some structures maybe every 1,000 feet or so on the way. There's a lot of work that's going to go into this, and then preparing a report and making recommendations is going to take some time. So we've built that in.
Neil, if I'm not mistaken, this the Hyannis force main rehab wasn't in last year's submission. I'm curious how.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, is that correct?
That's what I saw, and I
Yeah.
think I'm right.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't-
so you have a 5-year total of 8.3 million for a project which didn't even show up in the list last year. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so my question really is, this is sort of a substantial new addition. How does one, if I'm in your shoes, in the shoes of your team, how do I all of a sudden uncover a project of this magnitude, whereas it wasn't there a year ago?
Well, it's a legitimate question. I don't think it was on our radar, you know, but it should have been, and it is now. So I think Griffin and I have worked a lot on this project, kind of behind the scenes and developing it over that time frame.
Right.
But you're right. It was not on. I don't believe it was on last year's plan.
Right.
but it's something that certainly we feel like should be a priority, and we do reassess our priorities every year.
Right.
And this, once we kind of looked into this a little bit further, we feel like this is a very important thing to take care of.
I'll add
So-
one thing to that too, Andy. We
Yeah.
did have a portion of this work included in prior pump station request, like the 2020 request. We were going to do evaluations of basically 2 cutouts of the 2 force mains. But when we looked at in order to get an assessment of those particular portions of the force mains to really see how much useful life was left, when we looked at the logistics of that, the logistics warranted kind of further analysis. And then we really felt that we probably wanted to take a more comprehensive look at this. So as those discussions evolved, we really decided this needed to be a separate project that we pulled out and take a closer look at it before investing into it.
So even though there were $0 in last year's submission, it wasn't like this wasn't on your radar at all.
That's correct. Yeah, we were looking at it in a different manner, and you know, I think we've discussed this at length internally, both me and Andy, and this is something that, frankly, this is the most critical pipe in the system. So this is something that we're concerned about and want to make sure that we're out ahead of. There's probably some additional useful life, we hope, but you know, we want to make sure that we're addressing this before there's an issue, right? So
Sure.
I feel this is a big priority for the system.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. The effluent sand bed.
Yep, now we're going into out years. So this project is for the design and construction of improvements to our effluent distribution valves around the water pollution control facilities sand beds. This is how we spread our treated water across the property for dispersal. Again, these are 1980 or older in certain instances, valves that used to be actuated with motors with a control panel. A lot of the motors that failed, we operate them manually now. And again, this is something that we're looking to do. We're looking to restore that automation so that we can control flow around the property a little bit more easily and effectively. And Griffin, if you want to show what some of these valve structures look like, these are generally 21-inch valves, which aren't cheap. These little yellow things are just snap-on covers to help kind of protect the valve casings from corrosion. Right now, we get down in there it's a confined space entry, so we'll send a guy down a ladder, and he will twist and twist and twist these valves until they're open or close to distribute flow around the property. So what we're looking to do is replace each one of these individual valves and restore the automation aspect to the system. Any questions on that?
Anybody? There's no cost this year.
No cost this year. This is in out years. We're still,
Right.
and again, you know, things may change. We're looking at, you know, this could get tied into another project somehow, or we may decide we want to do things differently between now and then. But right now, this is looking like something we want to bring forward next year.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay.
Nope.
Sewer
Madam
system.
Chair, this is Mark Mill. I have a question. Would the committee like to hear more about these projects in out years, or are you more interested in just what is being requested for fiscal year 24?
I think
point.
we're focused really on the upcoming year primarily, Mark.
Okay.
Lillian, I don't know what your view is.
I think I would like to focus on this year as well. But it's good to know what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, I would suggest that if there's a specific project in an out year that you may have a question on, you can ask Andy about those, but otherwise we can give Andy the rest of the night off.
Yeah.
I think we're good. on
All
the
right.
water pollution control.
All right, well, then that will bring us to the Water Supply Division. Hans Kaiser is the Division Supervisor for the Water Supply Division. And Hans, take it away.
Good evening, Hans Kaiser, Supervisor, Hyannis Water System, and we have a bunch of CIPs. The first one is the pipe replacement and upgrade program. We've been doing this for quite a number of years. We used to spend 1.05 million a year to replace and upgrade the water pipes in the Hyannis water system. Some of them are over 100 years old, and we have come to a conclusion with the support of the Hyannis water boards that we really need to increase the expenditure every year to 1.5 million. It's, the cost of construction's gone up, and we can only do so much with the funding we have. This year, the plan for fiscal year 24 is a first phase of the AC pipe replacement at Longview Drive in Hyannis and related side streets, and we're trying to work with the sewer expansion. So we only have to open up the road once and do both projects at the same time. A part of this cost is also the salary of a capitally funded project manager to oversee and implement this program. Right now, for this current fiscal year 23, we're basically funding the second phase of a pipe expansion program on Route 28, where we're closing a major fire flow problem going east-west by eliminating a dead end. Any questions or?
At the end of this 5-year phase, will we have replaced all of the pipes?
No, we
No.
have a total of about 107 miles of pipe in the system. About 40% of that is older, 1911, 1930s pipe. So what we do is we go very methodically through the system and work from larger pipes into smaller neighborhood pipes, but we're still going to have quite some work in front of us.
Picking up on what you said, we can then anticipate $1.5 million going forward each year. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody? The Wells Pump Station treatment upgrade?
Yes, this is also an upgrade program where we spend $200,000 a year on all our facilities, wells, treatment plants, and there's a lot of different, there's about 12 to 14 different facilities that need to be maintained, anything from windows, roofs, to electrical equipment. We have a lot of HVAC issues. And what we do is we basically methodically go through each station and repair and upgrade whatever needs to get done. For fiscal year 24, we're planning on working on roof and trim replacements, electrical motor control, SCADA computer and antenna upgrades, in various well buildings and treatment plants. And we're looking at probably in the Mary Dunn area to do a lot of the work there.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Seeing none, I guess we can go on to the Mary Dunn.
Okay, the third project is the Mary Dunn 1 water storage tank rehab. Looking at $927,000 to rehab the tank, including some minor repairs and sandblasting and painting the inside and outside of the tank. When I say painting, it doesn't mean what people do in their houses. It's a specialty safe coating. It's basically 3 different coatings on top of each other on the inside, on the outside of the tank. These are specialty coatings for waterworks or water supply type of applications.
Hans, forgive my ignorance, but what is the purpose of a water storage tank?
There's 2 purposes. One is the major purpose is to have bulk water in case you have a fire or a water main break, so the system doesn't immediately empty out. It has some time to recover. So that's the major reason. The other reason is control of the system. We use the storage tank level, the level of the water in the storage tank, to control our pumps. So the lower the level in the water storage tank, the more pumps will turn on. And as soon as the water goes up and is all the way to the top, then pumps shut off. So that's our way of control of the system in the sense of pressure.
So it is a source of pressure primarily.
Yes.
And
So
the
it
water,
Go ahead.
the water that's in the tank, does it stay in the tank for a long time, or is it constantly being cycled through and replenished?
That's part of the trick of the trick of the trade here, is we actually have certain ways of making sure it gets replenished. The water pressure is picked up by a sensor that's getting radio down to our headquarters and put into the SCADA computer we have here that control the operation of all of these with all set points and all kind of stuff. What we do is to make sure that what we call roll over the tank, refresh the water, is we on purpose drop the level of the tank twice a day and till a certain point, and in that way we refresh the tank twice a day.
Okay.
In the summertime, that's very important because the sun is beating on it, 90-degree weather. The bacteria growth, or the potential for bacteria growth, is exponential by temperature. So even though we have a low level of chlorine we add to the water, 90-degree weather tend to evaporate that quickly. So in the summertime, it's important to roll over and refresh the tank just to keep bacteria growth under control. In the wintertime, we need to roll it over because we need to avoid ice formation in the tank. If you don't roll it over, if you don't have a constantly moving water level in this tank, you'll get a 2 feet thick layer of ice. And if that gets stuck on the top of the tank, and in the meantime, you let the water level drop, all of a sudden this huge chunk of ice can drop, and that would implode the water tank. So it's a serious problem. You have to constantly manage our operations because of these reasons.
Thank you. That's more than I ever knew before about water tanks. I would imagine if there's 1 or 2 feet thick of ice on the top, it would create pressure on the tank superstructure too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can handle that because it's steel, and that can be calculated out. The biggest issue is the creation of a vacuum, and that will implode and just totally destroy the tank. So we can't have that.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, moving along, does the committee, looking at the other projects of the water supply, do you have any questions about any of the remaining items? I have one about the Mary Dunn water main replacement,
Okay,
because it's a very big expenditure.
yes, it is. That water main replacement is actually a replacement of a 1911 16-inch water main that brings the water from Route 6 of Mary Dunn Road all the way down to just above the airport. It's a critical water main that it's the only one that we have that is absolutely critical that we cannot do without, because it's the only one. So 1911, it's over 100 years old. It needs to be done. It's not fun, and it's a lot of money. I definitely agree, but it's got to get done, and it's a critical piece of our infrastructure.
One thing I'll just add on to that, we were just talking about the water storage tanks. This 16-inch water main is the pipe that serves the water storage tanks. So without this pipe, we don't have the water storage tanks. So we felt that it was critical to address this now.
Right. Just as an aside, Griffin or Hans, can the committee get hold of, can you supply these slides to Mark so that we can have copies?
That would be great.
Because the descriptions are important for us to be able to review.
Absolutely. I will send them over to him in the morning.
Great.
Well, this critical replacement perhaps should be bumped up in its priority. What is your sense of that?
I'm sorry. Who's the question directed to?
No, I was talking about the water supply. The Mary Dunn $3 million, which is so critical, and yet it is number 6 in priority. And I'm asking whether we should, with what your sense is, whether we should up it and increase its position. What is your thought there?
Who are you directing the question to?
If I could, to our water supply guy.
Okay, that's me, Hans.
Yes.
Okay. The problem is this. All these projects are important. I would say for us to have water quality and water volume is absolutely critical, especially after the last summer we had where it was so dry, we used so much water. If you look at the priorities in the sense of water quality and water quantity, to do the new well exploration program and the Mary Dunn 4 well building, they both directly have to deal with water quantity. We need more wells, we need more good quality water. So in that sense, I say that is even more important because that deals with the structural long-term problem we have. The Mary Dunn Road water main replacement for $3 million is something that is important too. But if we cross our fingers and our toes, maybe the old water main will still hold for another year, so we'll be fine. And the other problem, which is a definite deficiency in water quality and quantity, is a must. So that's why we put number 6 as number 6.
There's another point here too, and this is an enterprise fund, not the general fund. In the general fund, those priorities and rankings really matter more so. And the enterprise fund, the expectation is the water boards approve these. The expectation is that all 6 of these projects will make it to the end and to the funding point, because all 6 of them, as Hans has mentioned, is important. I take your point, Lillian, but I think the priority aspect of this, and Mark Millen, correct me if I'm going the wrong way with this, but within the general fund, absolutely important. In the enterprise fund, it's more, which ones do we need in this given year that fit within the rate model for the rate study, et cetera, versus 1 versus 4 versus 6. Is that fair, Mark?
Yes, Rob, I would agree. And to Hans's point too, water quality is a very important issue for us, as is quantity, but quality probably even more so, because you want safe drinking water at all times.
Thank you very much for explaining the difference between the quality and the quantity. Yeah, we're learning a lot about water that we never knew before.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Hans, that's all the projects that are being proposed for 24, but if you could, for the committee's benefit, explain a little bit about what we're planning on doing with the Straightway and Mary Dunn filtration plants for the $25 million projects in the outer years, just so they know what to expect in future years to come before us.
Yeah.
Yeah, both projects are large treatment plants that need to be built. Right now, we're in the design phase of the Straightway filtration plant, which is going to take a while. The committee approved the $1 million for that last, basically fiscal year 23. We're right now in the process of dealing with that. Those are large sums of money that deal with quality. The majority of that is quality of the water. Right now, the problem up in Straightway, we have temporary filtration outside. We cannot use it right now because wintertime, it's emptied out, and it's a major issue. And we have some other water quality issues that cannot be addressed on a temporary phase. We really need this plant that's going to come in front of you next year.
Yeah, that's a big project.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
It's basically going to be a plant that is similar, just larger in the sense of quantity as the Maha filtration plants that was built a few years back.
So I have a question for Mark, which is, so fiscal 2025, Straightway filtration, $25 million. Is that funded from cash reserves in the enterprise fund, Mark, or is that financed somehow?
It'll be financed through, we're going to be submitting that to the State Revolving Loan Fund for a loan through them, both these projects.
So the revolving loan fund, the state fund, would finance 100%?
Potentially. We're competing against many other entities out there for water and sewer projects across the state. So, but these will be submitted. We'll fill out applications, and if they reach high enough priority on their funding list, then we'll finance it through the State Revolving Loan Fund. If they don't make it, then we will have to finance them through the traditional bond market.
One thing I'll add to that, Mark, if I may, is based upon my review of this year's intended use plan from the State Revolving Loan Fund, this is the type of project that they're funding, or at least this year. So we're optimistic that next year we'll be in good position for that funding source. They're looking for projects that deal with treatment of water, specifically dealing with PFAS and other contaminants of emerging concern, which is really what this project's doing. So we're pretty optimistic that this should score high, and hopefully will be financed through the trust.
That sounds
and the terms of the loan from the state fund, Mark, interest rate, tenor, what are those typically?
Being a housing choice community, we're at 1.5% for a 20-year loan through them.
20 years.
With potential principal subsidies, if they have available funding to provide principal subsidies, we could, be able to receive a subsidy for the principal as well.
But the balance because this is all funded out of an enterprise fund, the ratepayers are going to be ultimately responsible for paying back the loan.
Yes, yep, and we build these projections of the debt service for these loans into our rate projection models. And so we account for it that way. So it's not competing against the general fund financing.
Okay, thank you.
Does the committee have any other questions about any of the other projects in the water supply?
Just one, if I might. On the new well exploration program, last year's plan had $17 million in 2026, presuming that the exploration that was taken out. Should it be back in? I mean, or why was it taken out?
I can answer that question. It basically was taken out. It wasn't taken out. It was pushed back beyond the 5 years. So you guys don't see it, but it's still there. It needs to happen. The reality is that we had some issues with contracts. COVID happened. Everything got more expensive. So we didn't have the final answers that we were looking for out of the test well drilling phase of the new well exploration program. So what we did is we asking for $620,000 in fiscal year 24 to be able to not only finish the test drilling program, but also fund the next phase, which is the very extensive, it's going to take years, the environmental reviews, the EPA, DEP, state reviews, a lot of permitting needs to happen, a lot of modeling, a lot of additional test well, long-term pump tests. A lot of work is right in front of us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for water supply? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hans.
Yes.
You're welcome.
So
Moving on,
next,
solid waste. Oh, we're wanting, okay. We're ready for that.
so Griffin Bowden's the town engineer, will be talking to you about the comprehensive wastewater management plan projects.
Thank you, Rob. This first project is the Park City Wind Route Sewer Expansion Project. This is a large request for $30.9 million. This would effectively install sewers along the proposed Park City Wind Route, which starts at Craigville Beach and extends north through Main Street Centerville, up Shoot Flying Hill Road for the whole length of Shoot Flying Hill Road to about the exit 6 interchange. In addition, this project would include a spur up Finney's Lane on the south side of 28 from Main Street to 28 and a proposed pump station in the area of Mother's Park. This project, based upon the topography and the layout of the route, will require at least 5 new pump stations. And again, this project follows the proposed route of the Park City Wind project. It was not originally anticipated to be conducted in this manner in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. So if you look at our CWMP, this project is not shown in this manner. This is a mishmash of previously proposed projects, but this is a reaction to the Park City Wind host agreement and will allow us to install this important infrastructure in coordination with that project and really get the benefit out of the fact that Park City Wind will be responsible for paving these roadways upon the completion of the project, similar to the ongoing Vineyard Wind project. So this is the same model that is ongoing with the Strawberry Hill Road project. And it's a good example of the adaptive management plan that is really the foundation of our comprehensive wastewater management plan, which allows us to take advantage of opportunities to more efficiently install this important infrastructure and try to save money in doing so. There's the image on the picture. The areas in purple are the properties that will be sewered through this project. Any questions?
How long do you think it will take?
We think this is probably a 2.5-year effort.
Okay.
and we anticipate bidding the project later this year, and construction starting hopefully before the end of the calendar year, but potentially into next spring. And then we expect about 2 to 2.5 years of construction to complete the project.
And what is the mileage, Griffin?
It's about 5 miles. Whereas the Strawberry Hill Road project was about 3.5. So this is a much longer route. And again, there's 5 sewer pump stations along this route because of the linear nature of this project. It doesn't really follow how we would typically lay out a sewer expansion project. But we're trying to take advantage of the opportunity to partner on the project. So we have a number of low points along the project where we'll need to build new sewer pump stations. And that's one of the main reasons for the higher cost you see with this project versus the Vineyard Wind Strawberry Hill Road project. The other thing that you'll see here, and you'll see reflected in the other estimates that are included in this program, are twofold. One, we've now received 2 bids for similar projects that reflect the Cape Cod market. So the Strawberry Hill Road project was bid 2 years ago at this point, and the Route 28 East project was bid last year. So we factored the numbers that we're actually seeing on these bid items into these estimates. And then you're also seeing the realities of inflation in the construction market in these prices. So that's what's been factored in here. You will note that there are increases, and this particular project wasn't in last year's budget for the reasons I stated,
Right.
but you will note in other projects that there are some cost increases, and that's why. So
And so just so I understand this, so all of the requested money is shown in 24, even so you're kind of front funding it and then you'll fund it as you go. I guess I'm just interested in the out year cost is 0. You won't even start till next. That's just a cash flow accounting mechanism that you use.
no, so this project will be bid this calendar year. So we'll be using this money. We'll basically have to sign a contract with this money later this year. So it will need to be appropriated in this fiscal year.
Got it. Okay.
So there won't be any out year costs. It will be this will be the contract value.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Wow.
And Griffin, you mentioned the adaptive management style, I think you said, for
Yes.
the CWMP. So this 5 miles of pipe was not planned previously?
No. So this 5 miles of pipe was entirely included in our plan. It was included to be conducted in different portions of the plan. So for instance, the areas along Shoot Flying Hill Road had originally been included in phase 1 of our plan, but in the second half of phase 1. Some of the southern portions, like particularly just north of the Centerville River Bridge, were actually originally in phase 2. And if you look at the map that I have here, see there's green on either side.
Right.
Green is representative of phase 2. However, the route happens to just go right through there. So we're going to put the pipes in along the main roads that the Duck Bank route will follow. And then at later dates, we'll be connecting that with the portions of phase 2. So we're really expediting this route, but they were all identified in the plan. They were just identified at different timeframes.
Okay. And forgive me, I get confused with these phases.
Understood.
Phase 1 is 30 years altogether, right?
No, phase 1 is 10 years.
Okay, it's the first of 3 10-year phases amounting to 30 years.
That's correct, Hector. And in each phase, there are about 16 to 18 projects. And that's why you see multiple projects listed on here. Those are all phase 1 projects. We're handling them in logical bite sizes because phase 1 includes over 80 miles of sewer. We can't do that all at once.
Right.
So they need to be done in logical progression.
Right.
And what I was saying with this one is this isn't necessarily how we would normally package a project because it's not one big contributing area that would flow to one pump station. That's how we would typically try to design one of these projects. However, the opportunity cost of missing out on partnering with the wind project having those roads repaved for us, but also the opportunity of actually putting, coordinating the designs together so that we make sure there are adequate utility corridors and don't create logistical challenges with oversights, is important to make sure that we partner with this project.
That, that can't be overstated in the sense that, yes, there's a cost savings, but there's also the issue that if Vineyard Wind, or as example, or Park City Wind in this case, were to go through and then we were to try to come after them at more logical, quote unquote, times with the sewer, you now have a big duck bank in the road.
Right.
And it's very difficult now to maneuver around that with gravity pipes, because our pipes traditionally are gravity, and to be able to work with that. So the reason why with Vineyard Wind, again, with this one, if there's future ones that we wanted to get in front of the duck bank, is because the logistics of working around that thing, once it's in the road, are going to be really difficult. Those duck banks do broad sweeps, take up entire lanes, et cetera, at times.
Yeah,
So-
the duck banks are what, 12 feet by 4 feet or something like
Yeah,
that?
so for this project, they're about 6 feet wide and about 4 feet deep.
Okay. And to follow on Rob's point, what goes first, the duck bank or the sewer pipe?
The sewer goes first because it's the deepest utility traditionally.
Okay.
And
And
so
how deep is that
well,
typically?
it depends upon where we are along the route. Certain portions of this route are going to be about 8 feet deep, and certain portions are going to be 25 feet deep.
Wow.
My
Yes.
goodness.
So what happens is we install the sewer in its own utility corridor. I think on this project, we're looking in the eastern lanes, so the northbound lanes, for the most part, is where the sewers will go.
Okay.
We'll complete the sewer work, and then the wind contractor, the duct bank contractor, will come in and they'll install their duct banks. So they're not installed at the same time either. They're two different contractors, it's two different types of work. And so the sewer work will happen and then the duct bank work will happen. And if any other utility relocations need to happen in order to support either, they'll happen before that particular utility. So for instance, on the Vineyard Wind project on portions of Strawberry Hill Road, we installed the sewer. Then Vineyard Wind actually relocated a water main for calm water, and then they installed their duct bank. So there were actually 3 different utilities that had to be installed. So there were 3 different crews and 3 different excavations along each stretch of road.
And all of these roads have natural gas pipes in them too. Well,
that's correct.
So,
yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So during the design phase, we actually retain ground penetrating radar companies to accurately map the subsurface utilities. Because of how much is going on, we don't have the opportunity to get the mapping wrong. So we take extra emphasis to map the subsurface utilities rather than rely on record drawings, which a lot of times can be wrong. And so we've done that, and knock on wood, with the Vineyard Wind project, we were able to avoid needing to relocate any of the gas utilities. And that would be our goal here for a couple of reasons. Principally schedule, trying to schedule a natural gas contractor to get in and relocate the gas utility usually ends up being a schedule delay. So one of our goals is to not relocate gas utilities unless we absolutely have to.
Okay. This is, I'm interested in this, but it's sort of, we're digressing from the CIP process. Griffin, maybe you and I can talk on the phone at some point because I have some other questions for you.
Anytime, I'd love to.
Okay, thanks.
Great. I have a question for Mark. How are we going to pay for this? What are the different components of revenue that we're going to use to pay for this $31 million?
And so this, with the existing resources that we've created to date, between rooms taxes, meals taxes, and a contribution from the general fund, we're able to cover the debt service we expect on this project.
How much did we expect to cover on this? 50%?
We're the overall plan, the 30-year plan. Yeah, we expect that we estimate that we're able to generate about half the resources needed to fund the overall plan.
Yes. Thank you. So will we issue bonds for the remaining 50%?
we're looking, we may have to, but you know, we're trying to secure more federal and state subsidies to offset the cost. So we can keep our 50% contribution.
Thank you.
If that doesn't come through, then the local contribution is going to go beyond 50%.
Yes. Thank you.
I have a question. One of the things that has come up recently is the repairs that are needed for some of these structures that have been outdated. When you go 25 feet deep below the duct bank, if anything happens, if there's a rupture in the pipe or something like that, how do you propose to take care of? There's something that you have in place to take care of those repairs that would be needed below the surface of the duct banks?
That's a really good question. I think, thanks for asking that. So two things. The sewer infrastructure is not below the duct bank. It is in a different horizontal location than the duct bank. So it'll be on one side of the road and the duct bank will be on the other. Now there still presents challenges just in order to physically dig that deep. Actually Andy Boulay alluded to some of this earlier. There are a number of trenchless technologies that you can use to rehabilitate pipes, such as pipe lining. So if a pipe, for whatever reason, starts to degrades faster than we expect, or say 100 years from now is starting to lose its structural integrity, they basically have this new pipe that you insert inside the pipe, and it secures to the existing pipe. You have to clean the pipe first. And you go down through the manholes, you slide a new pipe in, and it will provide effectively a new pipe inside the old pipe that will last you another 100 years. Now that is great if you have a pipe hasn't sagged or anything like that. If you have a pipe that for whatever reason sags, or collapses, or one of the lateral connections to it has failed, for instance, you may need to actually dig down, and that's why we ensure that we provide separate horizontal corridors so that you can actually get at it. It's just will be very challenging.
Relining also is not adequate if you need more capacity.
That's correct. Yep.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, let's move on to the Old Craigville sewer expansion.
Thank you. So this request is for $1.5 million for the final design and permitting of what we call the Old Craigville Road sewer expansion project. The construction cost is proposed in out years for little over $18 million. That's actually anticipated for fiscal year 26. So this project will extend municipal sewer into the neighborhoods on either side of Strawberry Hill Road.
Right.
So what this will do is it basically will connect all these neighborhoods to the infrastructure that we're installing now as part of the Vineyard Wind project. So further leveraging that infrastructure that we've installed and getting full use out of the infrastructure we've installed as part of that project. This does address a couple of needs areas that have been identified in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. A portion of this area is identified as a needs area for nitrogen removal, and a portion is identified for pond protection, as Lake Elizabeth and Red Lily Pond are kind of on the southern portion of this area. The easterly side actually is also identified for well protection, because this property here is one of the calm water supply wells. So we felt it's important to try to sewer as much of the areas around the water supplies as we logically can within these projects. So those are what this project is really geared at addressing. This project was identified in phase 1 of the CWMP, and that's why we're proceeding with it on this timescale. Any questions?
No. Anybody have any questions? Thank you. Just moving along.
Yeah, so the next project is the Long Beach Road Sewer Expansion Project. And I'll show you the map on the next page. But this project will expand sewers to the properties basically in the vicinity of Craigville Beach, Long Beach, Short Beach Road, and Lake Elizabeth residences. Residences in these areas are completely dependent upon on-site solutions. Many of the properties are located in flood zones, velocity zones, have high groundwater, which makes replacing septic systems in these areas expensive. They are also, this area is also identified as a needs area for nitrogen reduction, as well as pond protection for the Lake Elizabeth area. This project will also decommission a shared septic system near Lake Elizabeth that serves about 30 properties, I think there, that the town's actually responsible for maintaining as a result of an agreement that was in place from the 90s or something like that. This project's identified in phase 1 of the CWMP. Construction's anticipated to commence in FY27, so that $9.25 million request in the out years will be anticipated in 27. This project will tie into infrastructure that is installed as part of the Vineyard Wind project and will be installed in coordination with the Park City Wind project. So again, you'll see we're trying to leverage the existing infrastructure we're installing with those initial linear projects in partnership with the wind projects in order to make sure we get full use of those investments. This shows the map. So the areas in purple are the properties that would be connected with this project. Any questions?
No. Why is that Long Beach, Short Beach section not included in the Park Wind?
So it's not included because the Park City Wind project, we're just focusing on the main roads the duck bank are along. Yeah,
because I know it looks like it's going up that way. So it looks like it's going right past it.
It is. So we want to make sure that we want to get in and out of the roads that the duck bank are going to go in, because we need to support their schedule.
Yeah.
So trying to do everything is not something we can do as part of that project. So we're going to focus on the main roads as part of that project, and then come back and do the neighborhood roads in subsequent projects.
Thank you.
And how many parcels are in the purple?
Let's see.
Oh, you can...
I don't have that number in front of me. I think it's on the order of 100.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, the Old Yarmouth Road?
Yes, this next project is the Old Yarmouth Road Sewer Expansion Project. This year's request, again, is for final design and permitting, $650,000 in order to extend municipal sewer to kind of the triangle that is formed by Yarmouth Road, Old Yarmouth Road, Ferndock Street, and the Yarmouth Town Line. So this is, as we're all aware, this is a heavy commercial industrial area, a lot of car dealerships, a lot of, uses that present potentials for contaminants. It's also in the Lewis Bay watershed, which requires nitrogen mitigation. So this project as well, and Hans spoke earlier about the Mahar water supply, which is right in this location, which is one of the main water sources for Hyannis water system. So the intent of this project is a few things. Is one, to protect water supply by sewering these areas that that have potential to provide contaminants, but also these parcels are really restricted by Title V. And the Planning and Development Department has identified it as an area that sewer expansion may help promote economic development. As I think everyone's aware, the intersection of 28 and Yarmouth Road right now is under construction. And as part of that project, we will be installing a couple of pieces of infrastructure, a few pipes that will help support this future expansion. Effectively, we're going to run a pipe through the intersection as they're digging it up in order to not have to do that in the future. But this infrastructure will all tie to those pipes in order to support that work in the future. So we've already started actually investing in this project, but this request would further invest in this project. Construction's anticipated to commence. The plan is to commence construction after the Mass DOT project is completed. Their projections are 2025, so we've penciled this in for 2026. If for whatever reason their project slips, we may look to move back a year as well, because we really don't want to have those two construction efforts happening in the same area at the same time. But right now it looks like they're on target for 2025. So we have this penciled in for 2026. We've actually already started work out here. Actually, the old Craigville project we just spoke of as well. We just recently opened the request for proposals for the survey work, which will map these areas and will be the basis of the design, which is what's funded here. So continuing to progress on these projects. And any questions on this one?
No. Anybody? Thank you. And I guess the last one you have is a feasibility study.
That's correct. So we've talked a lot about sewer expansion tonight with the projects before this in the CWMP. This project's looking at what we call our one of our non-traditional projects. And that's the proposed Warren's Cove aquaculture. This would be a feasibility study to really study if this is something that is more than just a really good idea. And it's something that may have some merit. So this proposed project would effectively, Warren's Cove is the upper reaches of the Three Bays watershed, or the Three Bays estuary, where the Marston's Mills River comes into. It's really got a lot of sediment in it. And as we understand, it's not a suitable habitat as it currently exists for shellfish. However, there may be an opportunity to do some dredging in this area that would make it a potential suitable habitat for an aquaculture nursery potentially. And in what we know about aquaculture is that aquaculture is very effective at removing nitrogen that it encounters. And as the comprehensive wastewater management plan's goal is to remove nitrogen from the Three Bays watershed, we wanted to further study this in order to see if it's possible to do some of this in situ treatment in the water treatment, leveraging aquaculture in order to hopefully try to minimize the amount of sewers that need to be installed in the Three Bays watershed. So this first step would be to do a thorough evaluation of that concept, see, what areas would need to be dredged, how deep it would need to be dredged, if it would then be a suitable habitat, and really what our expectations would be for nitrogen removal should we actually proceed with the project. This project was identified as a potential non-traditional project in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. So we feel that this is a project that we should study further because there really is the potential to offset the number of properties that may need to be connected to sewer. Probably not whole. I mean, it's certainly not holistically. It's not going to remove the need to have to sewer in the Three Bays watershed, but it may offset a neighborhood here or a neighborhood there. But any little bit helps. And if this is more cost effective than sewering neighborhoods, it's something we want to understand. This is just some pictures from Warren's Cove that show kind of some of the muck that you can see in there. Area that's certainly experiencing the nitrogen impacts that we're trying to prevent holistically throughout the town through this program.
I think if we find that it is feasible to begin some aquaculture, that would be really great. It would be very much like the oysters that are in Falmouth. Yeah. Absolutely.
Other communities are spending a lot of time focusing on aquaculture as part of their comprehensive wastewater management plans.
Yeah.
We have a lot of aquaculture already in this community. And this is a location that, currently doesn't have any grants or nurseries or anything like that because it's really not viable. But if we can reconvert the habitat to make it viable, and we can have the aquaculture kind of do the job we're hoping to do with sewers, right? That would be a win-win.
Well, it's certainly an area that needs work. It's, I think, one of the most polluted areas on this side of the Cape. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, that eutrophication looks pretty miserable.
Yeah, it's a shocking picture.
It is. Thank you. Any other questions about CWMP?
So I just have a couple of questions, Griffin, about the fiscal 25 numbers. First of all, what is WPCF?
It's the water pollution control facility for the
Okay,
wastewater treatment plant.
okay, so
Is this the
there's some
project you're
big,
referring to?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just looking, beginning with line, the Route 28 West sewer expansion. There's some big dollars planned for next year. Any general comments you can make about those?
Yeah, so I made my comments earlier about the costs and how we come up with these costs, right? So
Right.
we effectively know the limits of what these projects are going to be. This map kind of shows them.
Right.
This particular project has 4 proposed pump stations, decommissioning of the Marston's Mills wastewater treatment plant, and 5 miles of sewer. There's a lot of infrastructure. It's a big project, big pipes. And what this project will do is, without this project, the whole westerly expansion can't happen.
Right.
Everything that we're going to sewer out in the Three Bays watershed and the Pompanesett Bay watershed is going to go through this series of pipes. So this is really a foundational piece of our program. Big pipes and multiple pump stations come with big dollars. And so, we've, based upon bids that we've received and consultation with consultants, have come up with this cost estimate. We are actively in design right now, and we'll be looking to refine that number as we proceed. But certainly big dollars here. But again, this is really a foundational project for the program.
Okay, thank you. So for example, 36 million for the nitrogen removal improvements, that reflects what you estimate the contract will come in at.
That's correct. That's an engineer's estimate that we received upon the completion of our evaluation that we completed earlier this year.
Okay. One other question, little tangential question. We have one sewage treatment plant in town, right? Is that going to be enough to handle all this new sewage that's coming in online in phase 1?
Yes. So the goal of this project here is to reduce the nitrogen that leaves the effluent, right? And to provide higher quality effluent that we discharge from the plant. That does a couple of things. One, it actually will significantly reduce the amount of nitrogen we're putting back into the environment, leaving the plant. That reduces the amount of sewering we have to do in the Lewis Bay watershed, because effectively, as far as a nitrogen budget, it gives us a twofold of what we can discharge without changing the conditions that we're discharging from the plant. That's a good thing. The second thing it allows is it improves our opportunities to discharge of effluent. So there is a limitation to the amount of effluent we anticipate will be able to discharge at the plant without second order impacts of effectively groundwater mounding. So impacts to the elevations of the groundwater if we discharge too much. So there will be a need to have a secondary option for effluent disposal. Now we're looking at multiple options there, and our secondary options may be innovative and they may be more traditional. So you'll note that the effluent disposal alternatives project was listed in this year's capital plan. However, it's listed as a to be determined because we are still working through that recommendation. However, we will be able to discharge at our plant the majority of phase 1. At a certain point late in phase 1, we may need to have a improved improved option. That's something that we'll be working on in consultation with our consultants as well as DEP when our permit renewals come up.
So, so the short answer is the sewage treatment plant is expected to last us through phase 1.
That's correct. So as far as treatment, we'll be able to treat everything at the plant, especially after these upgrades that we're including in this project right here.
Right.
As far as disposal of the effluent, we're hoping our goal is to leverage the water pollution control facility site to the maximum extent possible, and then try to leverage emerging technologies and opportunities to increase that number. We feel pretty confident that will be achieved, but we're working through the finer details of that at this point.
Okay, thanks.
What will happen in phase 2, the
So-
second 10-year plan?
So wait a minute, let's back up a little bit. So just to make sure we're clear, the plant has more than enough room for treatment. So
Yep.
treatment will happen. The only conversation is an effluent disposal. We are currently completing a study and about to start a second study on that effluent disposal. That's highly encouraging that we'll be able to control that mound. Can't share with you that yet because it's an internal review right now, but feeling pretty good about it. So what Griffin said is under the existing conditions, if nothing else changed, the plant is good through phase 1. However, we're feeling pretty good about the fact that there's some work that we've been doing on this, and we've been working on this for over a year now. That's indicating that we'll be able to do even more there and probably be able to deal with all 3 phases there. Ultimately, there may be some aspects of it that we're going to have to look at sideways a little bit, but at this point in time, again, I can't share with you the results because it's an internal review at this point, but I really feel pretty comfortable that we will get this thing figured out.
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments about our major project here?
I don't, but Lillian, do you have a quorum without me?
I'm sorry?
It's Wendy. Do you have a quorum in the meeting without me?
We have 5 without you in.
So you do have a quorum.
We do.
Would you mind if I disconnect at this point and I can review the rest of the meeting online?
That will be fine. We
Okay,
still have a quorum.
Okay. Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, Griffin, as we begin our review and of the CWMP, as Hector indicated, we may, if we may, we'd like to get back in touch with you.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you. Rob, any other comments before we end this portion of the meeting?
No, really appreciate you guys having us back.
Well, we appreciate your taking the time.
And I think at this point, we've gotten through pretty much everything DPW related other than solid waste. And that's some pretty operationally focused items that are there.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of gotten through all of that. As Griffin said, anytime you need help from us, just feel free to ask, or Mark can grab stuff from us. Mark, do you need us on 3B on your agenda, or are we squared away at this point?
We're good, Rob. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Griffin. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for your
Bye.
time.
Thank you all.
Guys.
Andrew.
Boy, that was really, really helpful. Okay.
Big
I know more about water
dollars.
than I've ever known in my life.
Can't live without it.
Yep. Mark, do you want to move in with the financial update of the CWMP plan?
Sure. So I don't know if you've all had a chance to review that presentation or watch the town council meeting. If you want, I can go through a presentation here again with you. or just answer any questions that you may have on the presentation that I gave. What would be your preference?
Which presentation was this, Mark?
This was the CWMP financing update that was
Ah, yeah.
provided to Town Council on January 19th.
I have one question. I thought the presentation was very good. But given that the size of CWMP and the complexities and the things that aren't known, and just looking at this year's inflation, which was 22%, I guess, over the next 4 years, does that present a financing problem if the whole, if the 1.4 billion rose to by 20%?
Certainly, cost increases of that magnitude will impact this financing plan negatively. Absolutely. I mean, you can't. We're working on a. And that's why we're trying to take this in smaller bites and look at it on a rolling 5-year basis to determine, what's our best estimate of resources over the next 5 years? How much can we afford to pay, and what will we need in subsidies in order to provide for the funding gap? And that was the intention of this last presentation, was to illustrate that for the next 5 years, with about $300 million in new projects coming forward, and using estimates as to what our meals and rooms tax would be over that 5-year period, what we could perhaps see for subsidies from the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, we have a shortfall. Based on our existing resources, we can fund all those projects we just reviewed for fiscal year 24. We have existing resources to fund everything that we've already appropriated since the beginning of this program, plus that 36 million for fiscal year 24. But after that, the projects listed for 25, 26, and 27, we don't have the resources to pay for all the new loans associated with the anticipated debt service on those projects. I mean, remember, we have to go out and borrow the money to fund these projects. We don't have reserves of those magnitudes sitting around, so we can't pay cash.
Oh, darn.
And so, yeah, we fund them. Our first choice for financing these construction costs would be through the State Revolving Loan Fund, which offers, potentially lower interest rates for us, potentially subsidies for us. But it's a competitive process where we won't necessarily know. We're not guaranteed that they're going to finance every single one of those projects for us. They have a rating scale, set of criteria that they use to rate projects that are submitted all around the state from communities all around the state. We think our projects will score well because they're all about removing nitrogen from the estuaries. So we think they'll score well, but there's no guarantee we'll get listed because they have limited resources. They can't afford to fund all the submissions that they receive on an annual basis. If you're interested in taking a look at what those submissions are, they have published what are called their intended use plans on their website. It's on DEP's website. If you just Google, intended use plan, Mass DEP, it'll come up. And you can see on an annual basis what they receive in terms of requests every year across the state. It's in excess of $1 billion across the state. I think it's even in excess of $2 billion more recently. And they generally fund maybe 70 to 80 out of those projects, and they're not funding them. I don't mean they're not paying cash for these things. They're just allowing communities to borrow from them, which typically are more favorable terms than the municipal bond market. But we need more than that. We need subsidies. We need them to not just provide low interest financing, but some principal subsidies. You know, we need, when we put this plan together, we are expecting to provide 50% of the resources to fund this plan over the 30-year period from local resources. We've created that. The other 50% we were looking to get from other funding sources that could be created, whether it be federal and state funding. The Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund is one of those that has been created. But again, that's regional. It's not local, it's regional. You know, they're only generating 23 million a year. How much is 23 million a year going to fund when we have, every town has hundreds of millions of dollars of project costs? It's not much, right? It's just, it's something, but it's not a significant funding source. So, you know, we've been asking for you know, more principal subsidies on these loans that we finance through the trust. And we were hoping to see some of that materialize through the ARPA, federal ARPA program, federal build program. But it's not happening. It's not happening. They're not.
Why?
Providing the dollars to the state revolving loan funds to provide significant enough subsidies to offset this. And so that's why, you know, based on what we've seen over the past couple of years, it looks like they're trying, you know, the funding for this program is going to fall on the backs of the local communities. And so we are, you know, based on what we know today. And so, you know, our recommendation was to try to preserve our existing service levels and try to get that funding gap approved through a debt exclusion, and allow us to raise the property tax levy to provide the additional resources needed to fund these next 5 years worth of projects. So actually we can fund the 24s. It's 25, 26, and 27 that we can't. 28 we can, because by fiscal year 28, we now have some sewer assessment revenue starting to come in, because as projects get become eligible to tie into the public sewer system, we can issue assessments. And as properties start tying in, we're going to start generating some sewer utility rate revenue that can be used to offset some of the debt service costs on these loans. And so we're really looking at projects for fiscal year 25, 26, and 27, and a debt service on those 3 years to find additional resources to fund. Yeah, that's where we are. We're currently, you know, working collectively. I had a meeting this morning, another one Wednesday, with a group of local officials where we're strategizing and attempting to get a meeting with our Lieutenant Governor to provide more awareness as to what we're doing here locally, and see if there's some assistance that the governor's office can provide us with, you know, reaching out to DEP on these proposed Title V regulations and the state revolving loan fund assistance, and see if there's any assistance that they can provide. And I think we need to continue to create awareness of this issue and the significant financial impact it has on the Cape as a region.
Yeah.
Because all this money has flooded into state coffers from ARPA and Bill, yet it's not coming to assist with this
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
And Mark, why is it not coming?
It's a good question, Hector, right? I mean, what did they use the money for?
Has it been spent?
I think some of it has been spent, but I think, you know, a lot of it has been committed. And, you know, but committed to what is unclear. You know, if you go on, I got to continue to try to take a deep dive into the state files to see if there is any documentation that clearly illustrates what they've committed this money to. They have provided some of it, not much, but some to the state revolving loan funds. And that, for instance, we just received a 7.5% subsidy on the projects that were listed in their fiscal year 2022 intended use plan. 7.5%.
Wow.
We're looking for 50% in subsidies from state and federal sources. We got 7.5. Because they didn't provide enough, money to the state revolving loan funds. And I think what the officials for the state revolving loan fund program did was try to do more projects statewide, as opposed to really prioritizing specific projects in specific areas that are addressing, environmental issues and public health issues, and targeting more money for those efforts. So it's been a real challenge to try to find out what they've used this money for, but from what I've been able to gather so far, a lot of it has been committed towards housing, public housing, but in that, not public housing on the Cape either.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
Well,
Mark,
I have a question, Mark. What is town council's present consideration and discussion of the debt exclusion referendum?
well, the ball's in their court, Lillian. We are, they'll be taking that up in the near future. And it's about they have to decide whether or not they want to go forward
Right.
with the debt exclusion question and the timing of when that would be. So we're waiting to hear. I'm sure that'll be a discussion that they'll have in the near future. I think we're going to have April 1st. I think we've been requested to come back to the council and perform a workshop, town manager and I, in regards to a debt exclusion override, specific to a debt exclusion override, and what they may look like and what that potential impact on services could be going forward if that were not to happen.
Yeah. As you indicated in your presentation to them, we really need to be on the November ballot if we're going to do it.
Well, I didn't say we needed to be on there. That was an option.
Yeah.
They
Well,
could schedule a ballot at any time. It doesn't have to happen at that particular ballot, but it could be a special election could be scheduled at any point, similar to the way we, special elections.
That's true, but it would help us for fiscal 25.
It would certainly help for planning purposes if we knew we had the funding source for those projects, because we can appropriate the money and for those projects in fiscal year 25 without knowing what the funding source is, but we can't sign contracts. I wouldn't want to commit the town to a contract for a large construction project when we weren't sure what the funding source to pay the loan back was.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, I've heard it said
about this.
Yeah, Mark, I've heard it said in one or more meetings that, and maybe you've addressed this already, that the Inflation Reduction Act came up with enough money. One person said this to do all the sewage, all the sewer plans all over Cape Cod, but it's just sitting in Washington and it's not been allocated.
I don't know, Hector. I don't know.
What
You can tell me who said that, maybe, or have them call me and explain to me what's going on there.
Well, nobody knows what's happened to that money at this point. I don't think. Yeah.
So ARPA is separate from Inflation Reduction Act?
ARPA is separate from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which is separate from the Inflation Reduction Act. Yes.
Yeah.
And what does ARPA stand for again?
American.
Okay,
American-
I can look it up. So
Yeah.
it's ARPA, Inflation Reduction Act, and and then the infrastructure bill.
Bipartisan infrastructure law.
The infrastructure, yes.
The bill they refer to it as BIL.
What if the funding that is being requested, I noticed that we don't have access to the actual numbers, or whether the actual numbers can be reduced or how feasible they are. We don't know that. It's almost as if we're giving them a blank check just because they asked for it. Is there a way to find out if some of those fundings can be reduced so that we could take advantage of funding more or doing more instead of just covering one as opposed to the other, but reducing them or actually knowing the numbers so that they can be more feasible?
Are you referring to the
Any of
project
the projects, because we don't see what makes up those numbers. We don't see what employment looks like. If they're going to bid on these projects, let's say they ask for 30 million, but on a project that is $30 million, let's say just running the construction pipes or the sewer pipes, that bid could come in less, much less, like $1 million or $2 million less, but we don't see those numbers. And so we perhaps would exclude one of these requests to fund another, unless if we saw what the numbers were, then we could say, is this feasible or is this not feasible? To me, it's budgeting. Where can you cut the costs in order to make everything work instead of just funding one thing because it seems like the priority?
So these are project cost estimates, of course. And if we issue a bid and the project comes in under budget, let's say it's a $30 million project, but it comes in at 27 million, we're only going to borrow $27 million. And so, yeah, we don't have to borrow $3 million. We borrow $3 million less, where our annual loan payment will be less. So that may allow us to do maybe one more small sewer project that we weren't originally anticipating. But that's why we're looking at this in smaller increments on a 5-year rolling basis, because you don't know what the bids are going to come in at. But based on what Griffin said tonight, these project cost estimates that we saw tonight were prepared using what they have seen bids come in at our 2 big projects that we're currently working on, the Strawberry Hill Road sewer project and the Route 28 East sewer project. And so, yeah, it's certainly anytime your construction costs come in lower than anticipated and what you budgeted, that just provides you the opportunity to continue to work down the road of doing additional projects. So that's how we manage that.
Thank you. Do the committee members have any correspondence or reports to make?
Well, I talking about the CIP report. So I just want to be clear, Lillian, you and Chuck have volunteered to be on the CIP subcommittee with Wendy and me. Is that correct?
We have, right?
Okay.
Chuck?
Yes,
And
I was told I volunteered for that. Yes.
All right. And the final report is due the second week of April. I think April 12th,
Yes,
something like that.
Yes, it's due in April.
Okay. Well, I had wanted to have this presentation tonight before I tried to map out a timetable for us to meet and to figure out how we're going to, parse this report and who's going to write what. So now that we have this, Mark, maybe you can make sure that Griffin's slides get sent to us.
That would be
Um,
great. Oh,
And
Yeah, he said
speaking
he'd
of,
send it to me. I'll follow up with him tomorrow.
yeah, and speaking of which, they had slides from the last presentation as well, did they not?
right.
Yeah, I made a
Right.
note. I'm gonna ask him for both slide
Yeah,
decks.
That would
I
be
think
great.
I think it would be great if they're probably large files, but I
I
think
don't
they'd
think,
be,
yeah, I think they'll be manageable. I think I'd be able to email them to you.
yeah. But with having had this meeting tonight and with those two slide decks in hand, what I'm going to do is try to sketch out several meeting dates, a timetable for getting this report written, with help from Lillian and Chuck, if he's available to be drafted, he will serve, right? So that's my comment on the CIP subcommittee activities.
Okay.
And just an update for the committee members who are working on the CIP report. We are planning to finalize the CIP document and take it to the printers this Friday,
Yes.
next Tuesday by the latest, with the expectation that the printer will have those hard copy documents back to us by March 6th.
Okay.
Excellent.
So, but in the meantime, what I can send to you is a 2-page list of what the town manager's recommendations are going to be for the fiscal year 2024 proposed projects.
That'll be great.
I can provide you that list immediately. I'll do that tomorrow, first thing. But the books themselves, the complete document, we won't have back from the printers until March 6th.
Okay.
Thank
And I
you.
remember last year Nate put the entire document up on the website. Did he do that?
We'll have our IT department publish it on the website on, by March 6th as well, so you can grab it there.
If
So
you
we
could
would
get-
have,
So
we
we
would have
can get the hard
electronic,
copies on the 6th.
yeah, soft copy and hard copy, and
Yeah.
we would pick the hard copies up at your office, Mark, or,
Yes.
yeah. Oh,
Thank
that would
you.
be great. Good.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, do you want to talk about the tax bills for this year, or do you want to roll it over to the next meeting?
Oh, it's on the agenda. It's up, I can quickly go over it. But we've had several inquiries about the tax bills this year, particularly property owners who are on the waterfront. There's some significant increases
In appeals?
Actually, we had about 450 abatement requests out of
Oh my goodness.
8,000. That's it. Just over 1%. That's all. It's not a lot. And that includes a lot of commercial properties as well as residential. But anytime tax bills go out, there's always, especially when property values significantly change like they have, and it's partially COVID influenced. People were coming here and paying exorbitant amount of monies for properties during the middle of COVID. I think that wasn't just unique to Barnstable or the Cape. It was nationwide pretty much. And Barnstable wasn't the only one that saw this significant increase in values in waterside residential properties. So, we heard a few people question what was going on there. But when the average residential property assessed value went up 27%. Some of these waterfront property values went up well over 50, close to 75% in some instances. And it's based on calendar year 2021 sales data. But on average, if the average increase was 27%. So, as I pointed out in that presentation, the median tax bill increase was $146 townwide. So half of residential taxpayers saw a $146 increase or less in their property tax bill. We actually had over 7,000 residential properties see a reduction in their tax bill. So not everybody's tax bill went up. But there are several factors that impact the tax bill. You got the change in the tax levies, Proposition 2.5, of course, plus a factor for new growth. And then you have the fire district's tax levies. And one big area that impacted people's tax bills this year, and they don't look, the typical person will not look at the last year's tax bills and this year's tax bills and the components that make up the tax bill. They'll just look at the bottom line. But the COM fire district went up, their tax levy went up significantly.
Right.
It was over a $5 million increase, I believe, from 9 million to over 14 million.
The COM district.
COM district, yes. So if you look at your tax that you pay for your fire district, if you live in COM, like Hector, you and I do, you'll see a large portion of your tax bill increases is associated to the fire district tax, not the town tax necessarily. And that is very common amongst a lot of taxpayers in the COM fire district. Most of their tax bill increases due to the fire district's tax levy going up and not the town's tax levy. But then we got the natural shift between classes, okay? The residential class is going up 27% in value, and the commercial and industrial property class is only going up 14% in value. More of the tax levy is going to get shifted to the residential class from the CIP class. That's just a natural shift.
Sure.
Because the residential values have gone up more than the CIP values. So there's a natural shift in the levy as a result of that. So that impacts tax bills. So there's a lot of different components that impact the tax bills that we tried to present at that last council meeting to create more awareness. We did a couple of interviews. The director of assessing, Lane Partridge, and myself did some interviews with Channel 18, and those videos have been placed on our website talking about assessed values and tax bill increases and how it works. My presentation has been added to the website as well. So yeah, I think hopefully this will create some more awareness about the multiple things that can impact the tax bill, especially when you have a change in certain types of residential properties based on what's happening in the residential real estate market, specifically, waterfront properties. Waterfront properties were brought up where the market is reflecting that they should be at. Some may say, maybe perhaps waterfront property owners were getting a tax break in past years. But the values in those past years were based on, sales data from the previous calendar years. And we've had people suggesting that we need to provide, subsidies to some of these property owners because of the significant increases in their tax bills. But that becomes challenging for us because we can't necessarily do that. We can't decide to arbitrarily increase somebody's tax bill by a limited amount because the tax bill went up so much. We don't have the power to do that. The goal of property assessment is to make sure that the tax levy is distributed equitably amongst all taxpayers based on the fair market value of that property. And so if we're going to subsidize waterfront property owners to avoid a large increase in their tax bill, that means everybody else on the interior of the town has to subsidize them. I think you're going to have a real problem with all the other taxpayers who say, well, what's the need subsidizing waterfront property owners when they've accumulated this tremendous property wealth?
You'd have a revolution.
You would have a revolution. So, and we can't do it anyways. We just don't have the power to smooth a property tax bill increase over a multiple years period. We can't do that.
Right.
So, but and that's exactly what you would be doing for the waterfront property owners if we were allowed to smooth that big increase that they saw in their tax bills as a result of a big increase in their assessed values.
And the irony is that a lot of the waterfront property owners are not year-round residents. So A, they don't get the residential exclusion, and B, they can't vote here. So
That's right.
they're sort of, they don't really have a lot of recourse other than to apply for an abatement. Do you know the makeup of the abatement applications? Are a lot of those from waterfront owners?
Let me see if I have a list. I don't think the director of assessing sent it to me.
Yeah, it's okay. We don't need to spend time on
To
it, but
break out how many are waterfront, but he
Yeah.
did categorize them as far as residential, commercial,
yeah,
single family, 247 abatement applications. That's less than
Wow.
1%.
Yeah, yeah.
6 condominiums, 90 personal property second homes. So here's an interesting one. If you own a second home in the town of Barnstable, I think it's 2% of that home's value is assessed a personal property tax because it's not your primary residence.
that's
They also
interesting.
pay a
Oh, I didn't
personal
know that.
property
Oh.
tax.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second
I
part
did
of what you
not know
said.
that.
Yeah, so if you are a second homeowner in the town of Barnstable, not only do you pay a real estate tax bill, but you get sent a personal property tax bill. And I believe it's 2% of your assessed value, and that's the contents of the home essentially. And that's mass state law. They have to pay a personal property tax bill on that. Now, some of these multi-million-dollar properties out in Great Island, for example, have significant personal property tax bills associated. We had 90 abatement applications on those come in, and I think it's because we found a few properties that were second homes that weren't getting a personal property tax bill, so we made sure that they did this year. Just going through an audit check. Assessing division identified several of those. We had 57 commercial abatement applications. And those are typically, Cape Cod Mall, Festival Plaza, and they file every year. No matter what, they file every year. Doesn't matter. It's a standard operating procedure for them to file for abatements.
And do they receive it?
Not all the time. Sometimes they do. They may not get what they request. It's usually something less than what they request. But there's a whole process to go through. And the Board of Assessors denies many of them based on the evidence submitted, not justifying the requested reduction in assessed value. So the taxpayer then has available to them the opportunity to appeal the Board of Assessors denial to the Appellate Tax Board, which some do. And so on an annual basis, we have a number of cases that end up appealing to the Appellate Tax Board, and that's a whole nother set of procedures that the assessing operation has to go through. But all in all, you're talking about 464 abatement applications for the calendar year, for fiscal year 23 tax bills, and we're close to 30,000.
Right.
It's insignificant as far as the number of abatement applications. So all the noise that you hear out there, it's just, it's just loud noise from a few. I think we do a pretty good job of valuing property based on the historical number of abatement applications that we receive. People are generally satisfied that the assessed value fairly represents the market value. And remember, it's market value based on 18 months ago, not today. So that's another tricky thing to grab, or concept to remember, is that we're always 18 months behind, because we have to have a full calendar years of sales data. And so 2022 just ended, so we'll be using calendar year 2022 sales data to set the 24 values. 23's done, right? So, but
Well, the good news is if it went up 27% for this year based upon 2 years ago or whatever, it only went up 10% last year.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see as much of an increase.
Not through the valuations, no.
Not through the valuations, but there should still be some market adjustments will have to be made based on the 2022 sales data. I know both properties on either side of my home sold at the one in October of 2022 and one in December of 2022. And they sold for more than what their new assessments are in fiscal year
Oh,
2023.
sure. Yeah.
So they're still going up.
Yeah, no, in Barnstable, according to both Redfin and Zillow, prices went up by 10.3 and 10.4% by those two things. So it's slowing down, but I think it's still going to ripple through. I know that neighbors here that do have waterfront, one of them did see a doubling of their property tax, almost a doubling of their property tax. And as you said, they didn't look at how much of that was the COM fire district, which was probably
Well, it's substantial.
almost half of the total property tax bill. They just look at the total bill and say, you know, I'm not getting an increase in my pension. How am I going to pay this?
Yeah. Right.
So I think that's where and I think that's going to create for the tax exclusion vote.
The debt exclusion, you mean?
The debt
that
exclusion.
whatever, you know, they're gonna they need to consider how they're gonna get people who are a little bit burned, I think now in recent past to agree to another tax increase.
I think that's right, Neil.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the challenge.
On a more positive note, I was wondering, on your page 9 of the presentation about the taxes, you had an average tax bill increase. Was that across everyone or just of those people who got a tax increase? Did you notice?
Yeah, that's across everyone. And that includes fire district taxes as well, Neil. That's why it's,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So remember, the fire district's levies collectively went up by over $6 million. So
Yeah.
And what was the cause of that, Mark? The fire district levy.
You know, that's a question for the fire district.
For the fire district.
Yeah.
But you know everything that's going on in town. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Well,
If you
there
look
are a number of us who live in the COMM district.
Well, look at what their tax levies were for the past few years, Hector, and you know they were reducing their tax levies.
Yes.
3 years in a row, and so you know we were all getting a little bit of a tax break from the fire district. So, but they depleted their reserves.
I think I read somewhere that the auditor for the COM district is no longer with them.
Yeah, and I think they had some of that that contributed to that as well.
Yeah.
You know, some challenges that they had internally.
Okay.
So we're back on track with what for all the other villages or districts.
Yeah,
But we were getting a break.
I mean, if COM was increasing their levy by around 5% a year over the past 6 years, they're back up to where they should be.
Yeah.
To fund the same level of services, so you won't see those reductions and spikes. But
We just didn't know we were getting such a good deal.
no, of course, you know, like I said, nobody calls to thank us for a reduction in the property tax. Over 7,000 received a reduction. Some of them pretty good size reductions as well, but you know, you don't hear from them. It's a few on the waterfront that had saw significant increases, and justifiably so. They should question them, and you know, we try to provide them answers. But that's the major reason why they went up, is because you know, a significant increase in their assessed value based on market.
Yeah.
And so they look at the value, look at the bottom line assessed value of the property. If they don't think it's worth that, and they have comparable sales data from calendar year 2021 to dispute that value, that's what they need to submit in their application for abatement. But that's passed. They had to have done that by February 1st. It's too late now to do it. I mean, sometimes we make mistakes. We're not perfect.
Well, I tell you, I went through with a fine tooth comb, I thought. And on a comparable basis, I could not argue with it. I mean, they did it to all of us, I guess you'd have to say.
We're
So-
required to, because you want to, again, the point being, you want to make sure that everybody pays their fair share of the tax levy based on their current market value. You don't want to be
Yeah.
giving a group of taxpayers or property owners a break and keep their assessments at 80% of market value, and all these folks over here at 95 and all these folks over here at 50. You got to try to get everybody as close to market value as you can within reason. It's impossible to do everybody like a fee appraiser would do. We just can't do that. We use computer-aided systems, mass appraisal systems that allow us to build tables and apply metrics to property values based on their construction components and acreage of land and age of building and so forth.
No, I think the land valuations for water, just as an individual, were way undervalued up until this year. Almost, it was like the fire district issue, and it was too low. And so the problem is people are shocked at the change. And I think I can appreciate, some people are going to have a real problem with, with the increase in cost. It was the worst part of inflation they're going to see this year. But
when your tax levy's fixed, though, remember when your tax levy's fixed under Proposition 2.5, we can't increase. It's not the significant impact factor affecting those tax bills. It's not the tax levy, but it's the movement of assessed values from some homeowners to other homeowners, and the shifting of that portion of that tax levy from some homeowners to other homeowners, and that's the biggest factor. There's a lot of winners and a lot of losers.
Yeah, it's a nice place to live, though.
That's right.
That's why a lot of people.
Well, that was a good discussion. Moving on, do we have any other matters to come before the committee tonight?
Well, I just wanted to make a shout out to Neil for his little spreadsheet that he sent around. I thought that was very helpful. Neil, you obviously put some work into that, but it was helpful to refer to during the presentation.
Well, I've been doing it mostly to learn about all these new things. And back 50 years ago when I was in finance, that was the first thing we had to do as budget analysts was how did it compare to the last one? So that was a useful tool for me, and I'm glad it was useful to some other people too, maybe.
Yeah, I thought.
Well, thank you, and keep it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll be referring to some of those numbers when we write our report, Neil.
Yes.
So
yes. Well, our next meeting is February 27th. Hector, can you chair it? Because I'm not going to be here, and I don't have access to Zoom.
Where will you be this time?
You're in charge. Oh, I'll be in South America.
Okay, good. All right. I'll chair it. And and so the agenda for the next meeting, any ideas? I mean, we could talk about the CIP report. But any other ideas?
I assume we're in report season, so I assume that's what the next couple of meetings are going to be. So that makes sense to me.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, you don't have anything that you want to bring up next
Not
meeting?
at this point, Hector, but if something does come up in the next week, I'll reach out.
Okay, great.
Talk to you about adding it to the agenda.
Right.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chuck?
Lillian?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Jackie?
I'm here.
Neil,
Yes,
I'm going to take I'm here to be yes. And,
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm a yes. So we are adjourned.